In this class, I'm going to show you two basic elements of posing for boudoir photography. We're going to talk about triangles or V shapes and curves or S shapes. So let's talk about triangles first, V shapes. Why do we have to create V shapes when working on a boudoir pose? We need them to create a really dynamic pose. We need to create patterns with the pose and just to make it a little bit different. So when it comes to triangles, we have to create those triangles. So to create triangles, we need to bend joints. We need to bend elbows. We need to bend knees. And we can even bend our wrist to create those triangles. The more triangles we create, the more flattering and the more dynamic pose will look. Sometimes we can even take advantage of the natural triangles of female's body. For example, if we're crossing legs, we automatically create 2 or 3 or even more triangles depending on what angle you're photographing your subject from. For example, if I turn sideways or 45 degrees, you can see that over here I'm creating another triangle. So important element number 1 is triangles or V shapes. So create triangles in every pose that you're working for to create a really flattering dynamic pose. Now let's talk about curves or S shapes. When it comes to curves, we have to look for those curves and we have to highlight, we have to accentuate those curves. So the main curves that we're looking for on female's body are the curves of the breast. So these two curves are very important for boudoir photography in posing. And depending how you position your subject, let's say if you position your subject completely away from the camera or sideways, I would say, you would highlight or accentuate only one curve. But as soon as you turn your subject 45 degrees towards the camera, you will accentuate 2 curves. So the idea is, when posing for boudoir, is to accentuate as many curves as possible. So pay attention to how you position your subject or how you position yourself in relation to your subject. Another curve that is very important we have to pay attention to is the curve of the back. The curve of the back we can create by arching the back. So for every single boudoir pose, we want our subject to arch as much as possible. It doesn't matter what position, laying, sitting, or standing. That's a very important curve that we want to highlight. Another important curve of female's body, or I would say curves, are the curves of the booty. And it works the same as with the curves of the breast. So if we position our subject sideways to the camera, we will highlight only one curve. However, if we turn our subject 45 degrees, we're highlighting or accentuating 2 curves. So here the idea is to arch the back and push the booty out as much as possible to accentuate the curve of the back that is beautifully transitioning to 2 curves of the booty. Now let's talk about curve of the hip. It's a very important curve because all females have this curve. Some females are curvier than others, but it's very important to accentuate this curve as well. And we accentuate this curve by bending the knee and crossing it over. So we push this curve as much as we can. Another way to accentuate this curve is by positioning our hands and over here on the hip and pushing the elbow in all the way. This way we are accentuating the hourglass of female's body. And that applies with laying and sitting positions as well. especially for laying position, and especially if you are photographing your subject from behind. I'm gonna turn around so you could see it. So I'm gonna bend my knee, push it over, and push the hip all the way. And then I position my hand on my hip and bringing the elbow all the way in. That will create another triangle, and it will highlight the curve of my body, of my hip. Another very important curve that we should always consider when we're building a pose for boudoir is the curve of the feet. So we always ask our subject to point her toes or to stand on her tippy toes to elevate. So pointing toes, not only it will elongate the legs, it will make the legs look more elegant, but it will also add that beautiful curve of the feet in your photograph, in your pose. So pay attention to that and ask your subject to point her toes at the very end so she won't get cramps. Now, when we're bending our wrist, we're creating triangle, or depending how much you bend it, you can also create a curve. So pay attention to this as well. So for example, if we're posing our subject holding something like a bra or holding on a rope, usually clients would do something like this. But as soon as they turn, and that's what I always ask them to do, we're creating extra curve over here, and we're creating some triangles or curves with the fingers. So it's a very important element. The same idea or the same rule applies when we're positioning our hand on the head. So if we are positioning it like this, it looks flat. It doesn't look flattering at all. But as soon as we turn and we bend the wrist a little bit and we relax our fingers and we're creating some shapes, and it's just much more better. And let me just give you a bonus tip on triangles. You can also take advantage of natural female's triangle, which is the triangle of the chin and the neckline. So some people have more defined triangle there, some people less. And depending how you position your subject, you either highlight this triangle or you can hide it by turning it and facing completely the camera. So again, if you see that this triangle is something that is better to highlight, to accentuate and show it in your pose, then probably 45 degrees or sideways to the camera would work the best. We only covered two basic elements for posing for boudoir photography, but we have a lot more courses on posing on our platform. We have courses on fundamentals of posing, posing on different furniture items, posing different body types, posing for fashion, for maternity, even for headshots. We have a lot more on the platform to learn about posing. But for now, learn only these two elements: how to create triangles or V shapes and how to accentuate curves or S shapes.